Hello again. So we're back and we're looking at how three pentatonic families fit into one diatonic family and how we can use this to expand our phrasing. Now I want to start out just prefacing all of this by saying harmony is king. If your chord progression is in G major, then any of these pentatonic scale families that you play will be G major. Even if I'm calling what I'm playing a Phrygian shape or whatever, it is still G major. Same goes for if we're in E minor, or as we'll play A minor later, you cannot step outside of the harmony. Also, this video will include me soloing to songs, and therefore you may want to give these ideas a try, so I will include links to other people's backing tracks just to give you something to also try these over. Those links will be included below in the description. So here on this picture, we saw this in the last video. We can see that we've got all the notes of G or E minor. Obviously they're in the order that we're thinking about G here, but we could easily start from E and then call that scale E minor. All three of these pentatonic scale families down here include only notes from G and E minor. You will not find an F natural, and you will not find any other sharps or flats other than the F sharp that is included. Now what they do though is by using them, we do end up using different degrees of the scale. We can see that, using the one that we're probably most common with, G or E minor, the whole time, we're using a very harmonious sound. And then if we go to the second one here, it starts to get a little more outside because now we have 2, 4, and 6. A lot of the things considered to be extensions to, at least to G major. We've only got the 1 and the 5 really centered on the G sound. Now, I could put numbers down here too. If we were soloing in E minor, these numbers would change, obviously. We'd have 1, flat 3, 4, flat 6, and flat 7. So we'd have a different set of numbers there. In the E minor example, the flat 6 would be a really kind of dissonant, interesting sound on it. And then if we come down to the third one, just looking at that, we also can see this one's the weirdest one of all. It does not include the root at all, and instead has the 7. So it is definitely the most outside sounding of all of them. But as you'll see in the video, I tend to keep in mind where my 1 is occurring in the scale, and I'll slide into it, or I'll still use it in conjunction with this pentatonic family. Okay, and then here's the second image that I needed to show, which has the G major scale down here, also known as G Ionian. I got all the possible scale degrees here. And if we look at any of these pentatonic scale families, we can see that it only uses those notes as well. There are no flat notes or sharp notes of any sort. They're all the same exact ones from down here. All we're doing in one, we're dropping out the 4 and the 7. In the next one, we're dropping out the 3 and the 7. And then in this last one here, we're dropping out the 1 and the 4. If you find this image helpful, I'd go ahead and pause the video right now and take a screenshot just of this image, because this is an image I made myself. Also notice that I put position 1 for each of the minor scales. So in each of these 3 examples, I'm calling minor my first position, and that would make the major shape my second position. As we've talked about at length, you could obviously think of your major scale as position 1, and then there would be 2, 3, 4, 5. It would make our minor position the 5th position, right? And we'd be back to 1 again. So you could change those numbers in any way you see fit. I had to choose one or the other, so I chose the minor framework. This video is going to be a little bit different because we're going to do most of it on the guitar. Have to actually show it. So first off, in G, we got, right? We should be able to do that by now from the other video, or even going down to the D string. So this is the pattern I'm going to use the whole song, basically. I'm going to continue down 3 notes per string. This is the basic Ionian pattern, 3 notes per string, starting on the 1st degree of a scale. Some people play it like this.
In my mind, that's a Locrian scale. To me, it actually starts here on the 3 notes per string rule. So I don't tend to use that one. I use to help other people to say this out loud. 3 5 7 3 5 7 4 5 7 4 5 7, and then 5 7 8 5 7 8. So that's the pattern that we're mostly thinking in for G. Now, if we remember, our 1 spot has a major chord, G major. Our 2 spot has a minor chord, A minor. Our 3 spot has a minor chord, B minor. Our 4 spot down here, right under the 1, right, has a major chord again. I play this shape like this sometimes, where I'm barring my ring finger or even my pinky finger. I mean, you can do, there's the full-on shape. I'll do that. Then we got the 5 chord, which is also major. And then we come to our 6 spot, and we got the 6 chord, which is minor. When we get to the 7 spot, I usually just leave that out for people, but I mean, we have a half diminished chord there. We have to add the 7 in. Playing diminished triads on a guitar is not normal when you're strumming chords. So we got that, and then we're back to a major chord on the A string, takes the A major shape, and gives us a G major there. So we might actually have another video just about what I did there and learning bar chords all over the guitar, because that's really helpful for playing in any key and quickly assessing it. Like a lot of times in G, I'll just play exactly like what I just played, rather than playing actually playing open chords. I'll prefer a lot of times to be thinking in the 1 through 6 pattern using bar chords. It allows you to insert scales in the middle of it. Right? It allows you to actually go back and forth between your scales and your... I mean, I know you can do that in open position as well, but it just helps me to stick to one solid shape, and that's my shape. So how do we use the 3 pentatonic families that exist within one diatonic key? Our diatonic key right now will be G major. And remember, we've talked already a little bit about how G major and E minor are relative keys. So technically, the chords of both keys are exactly the same. And therefore, the 3 pentatonic families that you would use then for those 2 keys, E minor and G, will be the same exact ones. So using the 1 through 6 pattern, I know my major shape and I know my minor shape. So we can get them easily like this. We know G, the 1 chord, is supposed to be major, so I play a major right there. Then when we go to the 2 chord, we know that it's minor, so we could play A minor pentatonic. Okay? And then we go to the 3, that's B minor, so we can play a B minor pentatonic. All 3 of those so far have contained only notes that are in G or E minor. Then we go to C, our 4 chord, and we can play the major. Now, notice if I start the major on the A string, I actually notice that I'm playing what I think of as the Scottish pattern. We could call this the 5th position of the minor pentatonic. Alright, if we think about A minor, and then I come down to the 5th position. Now I've got that, what I'm thinking of as the Scottish pattern there on G. However, notice that if I start that pattern with a C, it is the same as just playing the C major pentatonic. Okay? So if we go up to D, same thing applies, because that's also a major. So that actually would be essentially B minor again, right? But the 5th position. and the 5th position starting exclusively on D, because D major and B minor are relative keys. To say that again, C major and A minor are relative keys. So the only thing really left now is we played G major at the beginning, we got an E minor down here. So now you can play an E minor shape right here. The B string kind of changes some of these patterns a little bit. But if we notice, we also know this as what we were calling blues minor pattern before. If I start up here, but if I stop it on the E, then suddenly I'm just playing E minor pentatonic again. So we can play those shapes just like that while a progression goes on. And all of those notes, all of them are in G. The question comes inevitably, why do we want to do that? Or why do we want to think like that? Why not just play G major scale? Well, the reason is because just playing the G major scale makes you, a lot of times without realizing it, you think linearly and you end up playing every note linearly, or maybe I should speak for myself, that's something that happens to me when I think of 7-note scales. I have to try to do these like outsides or do the fronts to try to like break out of the phrasings, right? To try to skip notes, essentially. That's what we're talking about. Skipping notes, what you don't play. Phrasing is what you don't play. You could almost say music in its ideal form is a scale, just perfectly in order. The notes that you don't play create the phrasing, right? So the phrasing is why we're doing this, because we want to select a random 5 notes out of those 7 notes and then play those. And you say, well, great, I've always been doing that. I've been playing G major or E minor pentatonic, they are the same thing. I've been playing that scale family over G and selecting 5 notes all the time, so I'm already doing it. And that is totally true. You're leaving out what would be the 4th degree and the 7th degree of the scale, and you're only playing 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. That's great, but when you start thinking about, okay, the A minor C family exists within here, or the B minor D family exists also within this key, then you start to leave out other notes that are not just the 4 and the 7. In fact, when you play the B minor version, you're starting to include the 7, you're actually leaving out the root. So you get some kind of weirder phrasings that can be harder to use sometimes, but if you practice them, they will make you sound more interesting in your soloing. So now what I want to do is I want to build a quick G major progression and solo and kind of show you how some of these things will work. Obviously, none of this is planned. I don't know what I'm going to play, so if some licks sound bad, that's just how it is, because we're experimenting. For this, I'm just going to utilize the fact that my D, G, B strings are a G chord, and I'm just gonna go make the easiest progression known to man here. So now cool, I can play over the top of this. So I'm thinking about this G Ionian pattern. Okay, I know where my G's are. That's an important factor. Anytime you set out to play a pattern, you want to know where the ones are. That's the most basic thing. I mean, you want to eventually know where everything is, but the ones, find your roots. So you know, when I run right here, I'm coming back to here, I'm not going to incorporate G major or E minor, we already know those are going to sound good. What we want to do is we want to see if we can use A minor or B minor. So I notice that my G is here within that A minor pattern. Ooh, okay. So I might like to step it down, and then come back. So look at that. That was. So there I was actually thinking about going down the A minor, but then coming back linearly. So let's try this with B minor now. So I know where my G's are. Now G does not exist in the B minor one. You get those sevens. So that's kind of an interesting. Got to my G right at the end. Notice now, again, just like we talked about, if I want to play C major, I'll be thinking of the Scottish position. Essentially, when I play A minor, I am playing C minor. Exactly the same notes. But the reason we like different positions a lot of times is just because they might fit into our scale better. If I'm soloing here and thinking about this Ionian pattern, 3 notes per string, then I don't want to as much have to come slide down into this B minor shape. And so I can achieve those same exact notes by sort of staying where I am and going, just harping on, sorry, it would actually be there, and then you'd slide into the G, because remember, B minor, D major does not have the G actually in the scale. You would actually just insinuate D major, and you'd be playing the exact same notes as coming down here and playing B minor as well. That's why we want to know all of our patterns in all different places, so that wherever we are, we can jump into the pattern that is appropriate for the position that we're in the fretboard. That being said, if you know, say, your Phrygian shape, so let's go, if I go 1, 2, 3, the 3 is where Phrygian occurs. If we know this Phrygian pattern that's there, then I mean, you're welcome to play B minor on top of that. And then you can interject a line of the full scale, the full G major scale. It's what I'm calling the Phrygian pattern, but it's so important to know that if you're playing over G harmony, you're just still playing in G. If you're playing over E minor harmony, you're just still playing in E minor. There is no way to force a mode. But we want to give this pattern, this shape, a name, and because it starts on the 3rd degree, we're going to call this the Phrygian shape. So now if I were using this Phrygian shape when I'm soloing in G, then I might start to think about, okay, well, of course I got that old B minor I can jump on and accentuate those notes while going back to Phrygian as well, occasionally, or like going back to the Phrygian pattern, you're technically just going back to G major. But then there's also, like, if I wanted to play that C major that we were getting used to, or the A minor that we were getting used to, I don't want to have to jump down there for C or jump down there for A. But I know that if I'm in A minor, first position, then C major pentatonic occurs right here as the second position of that. And that fits perfectly, again, into that Phrygian framework. So I'll try to do a little something and go back and forth between the 3 of them. Okay, so now we want a minor example. We could just move on to E minor, do a progression in E minor. We'd have all the same exact things that G had, but that would be maybe a little simpler. Let's stay in the framework of G and E minor, but let's think about like a Dorian progression or some other mode. So this means we're going to use a minor chord that is not the 6 as our home chord. And what I like to do is, let's think about A minor, and then let's go to the 5 chord. Very common Dorian vamp, used by Santana, lots of artists, a ton. Pink Floyd. So I'm just playing A minor and D major. Let's make it simple. Just make them triads instead of those 7th chords I was playing before. But so I like to use an example by the Something by the Beatles, and it has A minor major 7. Ooh, very mysterious. And then we go to A minor 7, and then we go to a D9, which is kind of another playing D7, but it's just got the high 9 in the voicing. So that is okay. So we got our loop going here now. Of course, we still have all the same possibilities. We know A minor is going to sound good because that's our home. It'll sound probably even better than E minor, but E minor can work. You just have to find that A within the E minor pattern. So then I think about, okay, well, the last chord is a D. Maybe I should accentuate, instead of playing A minor there, maybe I should have these guys spread out and become a D major shape. Right? So you hear that sound as we go down. That's a great time to wait for that switch to happen. So if those are here, then they're also here. So that's the octave rule. So I'm just singing A minor, and then at the end, trying to accentuate those notes from the D major pentatonic just to hit my D. So yeah, that's basically it. Now you're starting the idea of playing the changes. You're still working within one diatonic family framework, but you're starting to think, okay, what is the chord coming, and how can I accentuate the notes specifically of that chord? No longer are we just stuck, I'm in A minor, so I'll play A minor pentatonic till the very end of time or whatever. Now, when a new chord comes, you can start thinking about that. If suddenly, in your progression, you encounter a G major all of a sudden, then your mind should be going to the place of, how can I now incorporate that G major pentatonic into that progression? Maybe let's try that. Our progression will be A minor to G to D back to A minor. This is the Mary Jane's Last Dance progression. Or was that Dani, California, because they basically ripped it off. So you can always come back. You can always come back to your A minor pentatonic, so you know that it's there. It's going to work over the whole thing. But maybe you get a little more experimental and you start thinking, well, when G comes around, I'm going to try that. Try to accentuate more notes from that suspended shape that I'm seeing, more notes from G major. And the only reason I'm using the suspended shape is because it happens to exist right here at the 5th fret. So then my D major shape also exists at the 5th fret, but now it would be what I would think of as that Scottish shape. So you can try to use those G, then to D we go back to A minor. Now what does this do? It really just ensures that you're hitting arpeggios. Essentially, if we think about what is the pentatonic scale, I mean, it includes the 1, 3, and 5 of every triad. With major, you have an additional 2 and 6. With minor, you have an additional 4 and flat 7. So you do have a slightly different extra notes added in there, but it just makes sure that you were playing 1s, 3s, and 5s over those chords. You really can do no wrong. If you're playing D major pentatonic as D happens, G major pentatonic as G happens, A minor pentatonic as A minor happens, you in fact are playing the changes. You are insinuating the correct chords rather than just saying I can mindlessly solo on this A minor pattern forever and it'll work. Technically, yes, it will work, but it may not show your proficiency as being able to know that the chords are changing and moving your solo along to have those different notes. Like that pull down, that half step pull down would never happen if you were just staying in A minor. You might have some approach, you know, if you learn that technique, but you'll never have that step down where you're stepping into the third, in that case, of the D major. That's a really important thing, just to sound more, to get to that next place where you're not just playing one pentatonic family all the time, or one diatonic scale run every single note all the time. You want to find a way to blend all of it. Can I stay in the pentatonic when I want to bend and make those bluesy things go on, and then I want to accentuate this chord change, and then I want to do a completely linear run of the scale, and you want to be blending all of these different approaches to make your phrasing interesting and different. So basically that's the concept. There was a lot covered here. Definitely write down below if you have any questions about anything that I talked about. I know that I was speaking fast and probably glazed over some things that I assumed other people know. Definitely watch the pentatonic scale family video. Definitely watch the how do I find my chords in major and minor keys videos before asking the questions, because those could answer those questions for you. But if you have questions, please let me know. I'd love to answer them. All right, take it easy, guys.